Hello and welcome to another Office 365 Hours. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm the Brand Alliance Director at AvePoint and a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director. And I am joined today by Haniel Croitoru, a Microsoft MVP and Associate Director and Power Platform Practice Lead at Protiviti. Good morning, Haniel.
Good morning. How you doing, Chris?
It's great to have you. And this is a great topic. It's a departure from some of the thought leadership topics that we generally cover, because this is a personal case study where we're going to be talking about managing diabetes using the Power Platform and your story around that. So to kick things off, let's just jump right into it. So organizations today want to empower employees to solve their business and technical problems on their own, but in a secure and managed way. That's one of the reasons why the Power Platform, of course, as you know, is taken off, because it provides no-code and low-code options for employees who identify a need, create a solution to fill a gap. So why don't you share kind of your personal story and we're finding a similar gap and leveraging the Power Platform to fill that gap?
Sure, absolutely. So, I mean, typically I spend most of my time helping clients solve their own business problem. But this is something that happened last summer where one of my daughters actually was diagnosed with diabetes. It was a complete shock to us. We had no idea how to deal with it. We had no idea we even had it in the family. So you can just imagine what kind of a life changer that was for all of us. She's at the time, she was 10 years old. And all of a sudden learning to live with this disease, this condition that she needs to attend to every day, multiple times a day. So for those on the call who don't know, basically what it involves is measuring your blood glucose multiple times a day, giving yourself insulin shots, and making sure you give just the right amount, because if you have too high or too low glucose levels, it can be dangerous. There are devices out there today, so everybody is probably familiar with the little finger pricking where you just take some blood and it gives you a reading within a couple of seconds of your blood glucose. There's also devices, you may have seen them on TV. There's the Libre, there's a Dexcom G6, which you can wear, and they measure your blood glucose subcutaneously. So they're good devices, they do a decent job. But one of the biggest things for my daughter is every time she wants to eat a meal, she would have to literally go through every item that she's about to put in her mouth, determine how many carbs it has, how much sugar it has, start making calculations around how much insulin she needs to take. So you can imagine a hungry child who wants to sit and eat now needs to do all this math. Now she loves math, which is great, but it is a bit of a frustration. There's a lot of websites out there today that allow you to look up nutritional information, such as how many carbs, how many glucose, vitamins, etc. And so I was basically using the same tools I'm building for my clients, and I actually built a small app for her where she's able to compose a meal. She's able to look up certain things. She wants to eat an apple, so she types in apple. It actually goes and reaches out to the web. It goes to a website called NutritionIX, which is commonly used by dietitians, pulls the information, and actually composes a meal for her. And so it makes it very easy because it knows all of her parameters to be able to then tell her, okay, this is how much insulin you should be taking. It's not actually making any decisions because for regulatory reasons, if we were to make this as an actual product, you got to be really careful about giving medical advice. So it just says that based on her criteria, this is a certain number. My wife, who then prepares meals for her, is not at school with her to give her the insulin and to make sure she does the right calculations. So the app is actually able to compose meals for her, and rather than saying I'm going to eat this now, I'm actually going to eat it for lunch or for my snack. And all my daughter has to do is just select the meal, and it already knows all this information. So it's a big time saver for her. You can almost think of it as a, to some degree, helping her really maintain her health, because without it, she'd be in trouble and it would take a lot longer. So that's kind of the crux of it. But really, the thought of it is not just stopping there. There's a lot of research. So insulin, which was actually invented 100 years ago in Toronto, which is where I'm based out of. There's a Sick Kids Hospital. They're doing a lot of great research, a lot of innovation. But my hope really is kind of taking this tool that I built for my daughter and finding ways to actually help the research community in finding better solutions of how to determine certain patterns in children, right? If they eat certain foods that have, let's say, a high glycemic index or other parameters, and actually be able to determine certain patterns and maybe even use some artificial intelligence for that.
That's the thing that we think about. Obviously, there's the original purpose of this is to make it easier for, and there are other apps that do similar things that are out there, and you add your food items. It helps you as you go and do your shopping so that you have the right portion control over, what you're able to go and eat, but what you need to buy, the ingredients that go into meals that you prepare, so you can plan out the meals in advance around that. So that's great to have the tools around that. But what is missing from a lot of those other apps that you have the ability, because you went and built this, is exactly what you just described, is the second half of that, of capturing this data. What are the patterns just for your daughter? What are the patterns, seasonal patterns? You even can go back. You could, if you ever had an episode or like, well, what happened? And we thought she was being very careful around this, and going and looking at the data and see if anything has changed within that pattern. And then looking at classes of users, of youth between age ranges and in parts of the country, parts of the world, different food types, and look and see if there are any differences there. So we learn a lot about even the food that we're consuming.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, even if you look at the devices I was talking about, so the finger pricking is the most accurate method. It goes directly, it takes the blood, it tells you exactly what it is. Other devices, they're actually measuring the glucose under your skin. So there's usually about a 10-minute delay from what it reads to what it actually is. So it's 10 minutes behind. What we often find is that the measurements may be off. Maybe the device is getting a bit old, the battery is running out, the sensor needs to be changed. So we sometimes find that there's a bit of an aberrant behavior. And that's when we have to then fall back and do the finger pricking. And so finding kind of correlations and being able to capture information from multiple of these devices and collating it all into one single database, right, to track it and see how is my child doing over time is really important, because otherwise I have one app for my glucose level, I have another one for Dexcom, I have another app for the Libre, right? They don't talk to each other, there's no relationship between them, and none of them are really tracking in detail all the food that she's consuming and all those analytics. And then other benefits, for example, when there's low glucose, that can be life-threatening. So it sends an alert to anybody who's registered to my daughter's device, myself, my wife, and her nurse. But all it tells you is that there's low glucose. Well, my daughter, who's now 11, likes to go out with friends and maybe hangs out, but she may not be where I dropped her off. She may be out somewhere. So the app that I actually built is the moment that it reports that there's low glucose, it actually determines her GPS location and sends me a map saying,
oh, wow,
this is where she is.
Yeah.
Which it may sound like a very simple thing, but again, this is really important. If I need to get to her right now or get her help right now, I don't have to start calling people to figure out where she is.
Yeah, no, I remember having a friend who was diabetic as so I'm trying to remember, it was middle school, and where we went on a long hike, and he did not have food with him and kind of lost track of time. We had a scary moment there. It was okay. We all survived, got back down. He had other medicine with him, and we were okay. But we had a sketchy moment, and to be up on the side of a mountain as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old with a friend who's having health problems, like, I freaked out a bit. I was a Boy Scout, but I was a skinny little kid, and I thought for a second, like, am I going to have to carry him? Like, how am I going to do this? But so having that location awareness and be able to track that, to get those alerts, to be able to be aware of uh, if with the tracking, if the glucose levels drop, or if input of data of meal information or whatever is not on schedule as well, you can get an alert, be like, hey, you should be eating something, you should be taking a step now, taking action around this. But I'm also interested in, like, where does this go from here? Have you talked to anybody about expanding on this and doing something with this solution that you've built?
Yeah, so I did actually share my idea with some of my contacts at Microsoft who are leading the market in Canada, and they're very, very excited to help participate. Help Sick Kids Hospital that I mentioned before, to actually help stand up something that is going to be larger, maybe some sort of a study or something that can be given to multiple patients. You touched on an interesting point before about security and managing the data. So this is something that I'm thinking about where, yes, I build a tool for my daughter, but what if I wanted to share it with another family from her school? What about, an entire study across multiple patients who may be in all of Toronto or Canada or even globally, right? So these are the kind of thoughts. And if you look at the beauty of the Power Platform, what started as call it a pet project, has now become something that is being used on a daily basis, and hopefully will soon then start to roll out into other families, other households. And so building in the security to say that, okay, every patient is anonymized. It's only a number that you know about, so that if anybody's ever going to look at it, yes, they can know some basic demographics around gender, around age, but there will be no way to identify who the patient is. And those are the kind of things that I love about the Power Platform, because it's easy to build those kind of security gates, if you want to call them, or security guidelines, without exposing too much information, but still giving you the functionality that you need.
So sometimes you forget about that. I mean, having been in product related companies and working for ISVs, that kind of thing, is you think of the creation, the innovation process. Hey, I have this great idea, like I saw this need, want to go and fill it. It doesn't always translate into something that is marketable or scalable around that product or that service, because as you point out, you have to be very careful about what is included within the app to not give out or portray it as medical advice. It's a tracking tool, and you're doing something with that information, but you can't then make give medical advice. You have to be very careful with that, and certainly with an application. If you were to go and make this generally available, and so what is the next step with that? If you do solve this, you want to make this available, do you just make the template for the app available out on the website? Kind of what's kind of your path to sharing this?
So I think the right path is going to be working with the hospital. If they're going to be on board, it really would be them to communicate to their patients that this is now becoming available, and then any patient who wants to sign on, it would be something as simple as, here's a Microsoft 365 account, download the Power App, click on the button, and it just opens up. And obviously there would have to be a few steps on registering the patient, entering some basic demographics, and that's it, and start using it. It's literally would be as simple as that, which is how we started up, is build it up the first time, collect the basic information. Some things will be different between patients, obviously things like the type of insulin, the dosages, but it has to be configurable so that the hospital who looks at it from a macros lens, they should be able to tell what are kind of the patterns, regardless of the details. If they want to dive into the details, they will be able to do so. And I'm thinking having this beautiful Power BI dashboard that can really lets you kind of drill down into those details.
Well, I have to think of it, put my business hat on with a solution like this, to say that, what are the kind of the commonalities with developing a solution as it employees within my team, and thinking about kind of the governance, the process around managing solutions that are built. like I may go from my work team, my team of 8 to 10 people might say, hey, we have these patterns of these things, these repeat processes. I'm going to go and automate some of these. I'm going to build a solution that meets the need of what we're doing. And if I say, hey, this is something that other parts of my organization or even partners could use, it's not just something that I can post out there, or should I? Just post out there, make available, and let buyer beware, that may or may not fit, and you need to make sure that it's compliant, that it's secure to the standards of your organization, your business. But what should that process look like at a high level?
So, if you were to look at it at any organization, the Power Platform needs to be governed just like any other system, any other component that you have. So you'd want to be looking at certain elements. Is the data secure? Who has access to it? If you're going to be introducing any sort of changes to the environment, who has access to do so? How are you communicating those type of changes? How can you roll back if something is not working the way that it should? So there's a lot of these kind of elements that you want to think about. Even in this kind of an application that I'm talking about, it's not just about saying, okay, I'm going to make it available to every patient. And even if, let's say, Microsoft would say, here are the licenses and the hospital is good with it, it needs to follow certain patterns, and you need to make sure that you're protecting the data. You want to make sure that it's built in a way that is very resilient, right? So if a key workflow is failing, how are you dealing with it? Are you just going to wait for a message to show up in your mailbox a day later saying, oh, by the way, the workflow failed? Or does there have to be some sort of an escalation to deal with it immediately? So those are all these, there's a lot of different elements in the governments you got to think about. Monitoring the solution, being alerted of any issues, managing the changes. If you're looking at just general application lifecycle management, right? Let's say there's a new version that we want to release. Well, do we just send it out to the users, or do we need to communicate that, or at least have the application there with a new version, but let the user know what has changed, what are the implications? So a lot of those things.
I was also thinking, was thinking about how in the real world, something like the solution that you developed could also be implemented. I mean, if the school had some degree of visibility, if parents could go and say that because I'm sure there are other diabetic children within the school that your daughter attends, and there are other children with other health issues that need similar alerts around that. If the school could have even have alerts. They don't have to have all the medical information because you want to be protective, sensitive to the privacy of that information, but could have an alert system where the school also gets similar notifications. You could set that up as part of the automations. There's a lot that you could do with a solution like this to cover a lot of ground and to make it at least make parents feel safer that their kids, while they're in school, if there's something that goes wrong, that you're alerted, the teachers, the school, the administration are aware of the specific needs of those children.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to even add it seems like almost every app today has a social element to it. I mean, even in something like this, you can think about that. Maybe there's a network of parents who have children with similar conditions, right? I'm far from my daughter. Hey, could you go and see if she's okay? Can you maybe provide her something or help out, right? So you can always think about it that way as well, is creating that kind of a community through technology.
That's always a great solution, is having to tap into the community component of this. Well, is there, for people that want to find out more about like what you built, do you have a site or anything around it, or could people like reach out and connect with you about this?
So definitely reach out to me if you have any questions, if you'd be interested in trying it out, participating, helping out. As I said, this is something that I've been using personally. I want to definitely develop it further and increase. And just connect with me, stay tuned. I mean, I'm definitely looking to talk about it more, present about it more, and hopefully make it available to more people soon.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those things where I know that, Microsoft has, you said you're already talking with them about it, but Microsoft has a number of different organizations and has funding available for doing things which are on the philanthropic side of the business. But it always helps to have more people who are interested in getting involved, lending their technical skill and their voices in that, and further testing this out and expanding on what you've already built. But that's part of that innovation cycle that's very exciting, because it's not just about what you've built and it may be meeting those immediate needs, but expanding that out by having other voices, other opinions involved.
Yep.
Well, very cool. Well, Haniel, really appreciate you taking the time this morning and sharing your project, your experience. And again, it's great to have, we talk about at a high level what can be done with business solutions at the Power Platform, but here's a real world example of something that you went and saw a need and were able to fill that gap. And that's very inspiring.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, Chris.
Thanks for being here. And for those that are watching, if you've not already done so, please subscribe to the Office 365 Hours to get notifications about upcoming shows, which come to you on the first and third Wednesday morning of each month at 11 a.m. Eastern. So thank you all for watching.